Coming up, both members of one of the biggest duos in music history tell us the story of writing a song that was not only their biggest hit, but it was inspired by one of the biggest legends of rock and roll. And then, that same legend covered their song. And then a decade after that song was a big hit for the duo, a glam metal band took it toward the top of the charts as well. The amazing stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever had a noise complaint because you turned your music up to 11 or too loud, you're going to love this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now to be a part of this music community. We'd love to have you. Make sure to click the bell so that you don't miss out on our latest videos, our history coming from the stars. We also invite you to join our Patreon. We have a new series that's going to start streaming on there. You're going to love it. And you can also become an honorary producer. So it's time for another edition of our show, Revelations. This is where featured artists share rare stories about their greatest songs and their albums. It's insight that you really won't find anywhere else. And that's the truth, my friends. You know, before Daryl Hall and John Oates became the biggest selling music duo of all time, Loggins and Messina were vying for that crown. I mean, they sold 16 million records in the early 70s, and they were the most successful duo of that time, the early 70s. They were surpassed later in the decade only by the aforementioned Hall and Oates. Jim Messina, formerly of Buffalo Springfield and Poco, he was working as an independent record producer for Columbia Records in 1970, when he met Kenny, of course. Kenny was a little-known singer-songwriter and a guitarist who was signed to ABC Dunhill as a staff songwriter at that moment. The way they met and how they became a duo is really interesting. It's a great story for another day. And even though Jim Messina was the producer and Loggins was the singer-songwriter, they came together and released many albums in the early to mid-70s, before Kenny went solo, because there was a magic there. Their debut album was released in, I believe it was November 1971. It was Kenny Loggins with Jim Messina sitting in. The album's first single release, the Caribbean-flavored Vahivala, that found top 3 success on Chicago's WCFL in the early summer of 72. Vahivala and a minor hit, another one called Nobody But You, both hit the top 100. Although at first the album went unnoticed by major radio when it came out, it continued to rise throughout 1972, especially in college campuses where the duo toured heavily. Loggins and Messina, their harmonies meshed so well that what was begun as a one-off album became an entity unto itself. They charted 3 top 20 singles from the second and third albums. Their biggest hit, of course, the number 4, Your Mama Don't Dance. They co-wrote that song, Your Mama Don't Dance, from really different perspectives, similar as well. Very interesting. They're going to share the story next, but really the most magical thing about this song is the fact that they were inspired by the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley, and then Elvis covered it. Why your mama can't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. Both Kenny Loggins and Jimmy Messina will tell you about how they felt about that. And more coming up now. As we go into this interview session, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, that helps to make this possible. With Zenni, you can do whatever you want. You go there, you pick out the style, the color, the frame shape, and you can see how you look before you buy. They have a feature there where you can actually put any pair of glasses on, check it out, and then you just put in your prescription, you put in your address, and they deliver them right to your door. It's such an amazing experience. I've had so many people write in, send me emails and comments about their experience with Zenni. I haven't had one person say that it had a bad experience that I've seen. It really is the real deal. Check it out at Zenni.com. Here is Kenny Loggins and Jim Messina, Loggins and Messina. Well, Your Mama Don't Dance, that was a co-write, and such a classic song. Went to number 4 on the pop charts. Biggest hit that Loggins and Messina ever had. Number 19 on the AC charts. But this very much shows the influence that you grew up with your parents. And I love your story on this. Tell us a story about your inspiration for your part that you brought to Your Mama Don't Dance.
Well, growing up, I had different situation. I was a very strict household. My stepfather was from Arkansas. Came from a point, I don't want to see you out after dark. You don't go to somebody's house at night, and unless you want to get shot. Your folks say that you gotta end your day by 10. Curfews and all this stuff, and had to be home by a certain time. And I remember when I was working on this song, I had most of it done, but there was pieces that just didn't. I had the part, your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. Your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. And then the part where you know, this was very much my life growing up, going to drive-ins with girls. You were driving, you find a place to park. And all that energy, and boy, I wonder if this is going to be my lucky day, lucky night. And of course, that never happened. But the fantasy of it was, you pull into a drive-in, you find a place to park. You hop into the back seat where you know it's nice and dark. You're just about to move in. You're thinking it's... You hop into the back seat where you know it's nice and dark. You're just about to move in. You're thinking it's a breeze. There's a light in your eye. And then the guy says, out of the car, long hair, ooh wee. Out of the car, long hair, you're coming with me. The local police. You're coming with me. It's the local police. And it's all because your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. And that whole image, that was my life. That was just my life. You know, even when I was playing shows, I was not allowed to stay out after a certain time. And it's all because your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock. And when we started doing CYOs, my mother had to step in and say, look, Herbie, your son's going to be playing, you know, from 8, 9, 10 to 11. That's 3 hours. He needs to be able to pack up, get something to eat, and be home. He says, okay, that he could stay out till midnight. So I had an hour to pack up, you know, go to Norm's, have a hamburger, and get back home. So having Kenny to help me finish that, there was just some pieces that I couldn't get, and he was able to come in. I don't remember what they were, but whatever they were perfect. We put that song together, or wrote it once we sat down in 30 minutes, because the band was late showing up, and we needed a song that we could close a set with. This is when we were just starting out. This is before Troubadour and all that. We're just now planning to do shows. And we needed a song there that could be a closer. And so I brought this song to him, and he jumped in it right away. We worked on it, got it finished. The band shows up and said, hey, we got a new song here. We started playing it and working it out then. And boy, when we took it on stage, it was a hit immediately. People just loved it. It's a stupid ass song, but it's, you know, it worked.
Let's talk about Your Mama Don't Dance. Tell me about how that came together.
We didn't take that song seriously at all. We were waiting for the band to show up for rehearsal, and Jimmy had that line, your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. And we were just writing stuff off the top of our heads and making it funny. The whole, you know,
hippie,
out of the car, long hair. It was all a bit of a joke. Out of the car, long hair. And then we started doing it in concert, and the audience went crazy.
Yeah.
And we said, God, we got to record this thing. It looks like it's going to work.
And it's all because your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
We thought of it like this. So it was like we were coming from Kansas City, here I come. Mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. Which I think is way cooler.
Oh, yeah.
Mama don't dance,
little blues.
Your daddy don't rock and roll. It wouldn't have been a hit that way, but it was cool. But I was watching that Loggins and Messina video going, my God, what's your hurry? Your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. We were young, I was 22 years old, 23, 22 on Mama Don't Dance. And the adrenaline was pumping. And so we go out and do everything double time. I heard an old live record and thought, why are we doing everything so fast? But I needed to destroy my adrenals before I could slow down.
And then, of course, years later, Poison covers it.
Your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
And it went to the top 10 again and became gold again. What did you think of that? A whole new generation.
Well, I went to the bank with that. That was, again, it was a great thought.
When evening rolls around and it's time to hit the town, where do you go?
It's another thing to have the king of rock and roll sing your song.
Your mama can't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
Singing it the other day with my kids. I was like, you ain't no friend of mine.
Well, you ain't another quarter rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. Just ain't no excuse and you know you're gonna lose and I win. I said it.
And I was like, that's Hound Dog, man. So a little bit of a tip of the hat to Hound Dog.
Absolutely.
That had to be a pinch
You know,
me moment.
you talk about influences. My big brother was my primary influence about music because he was a collector and he had books of 45s. So I wasn't allowed to touch his stuff. He was my big brother. So I would come home early and sneak into his room, and then I would play his records. And the one that I stopped cold on was Hound Dog. It was like, what the hell is this? You know, but 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and it was like, this is important. That and Brenda Lee were important sounds for me. And but anyway, to have Mama Don't Dance side by side with Hound Dog was, you know, that was like one of my moments.
Let's talk about when you came together with Jim Messina, who was with Buffalo Springfield and Poco, and you were a staff songwriter, right, before that?
Yeah, but it wasn't a very serious job. It's a company called ABC Wingate.
Mm-hmm.
I got the job as a writer because of House of Pooh Corner, and they still have that publishing. You know, that was the one that was the slam dunk. I withheld Danny's song because every time I sang it, I got laid, and I figured, must be an important song. So don't give that one away. But I was still a fledgling writer, but I couldn't get anything placed because my vocal range was too big.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could go from, you know, low notes into super high falsetto. And I was writing stuff like that. And people would hear it and go, we can't sing that. We can't hit those notes. So that's when you know the writer is the guy who's supposed to be the performer too. And I'm the only one who could sing my stuff.
You had talked about your stepfather was from Arkansas, but he wasn't into rock. He was more into Ernest Tubb and Johnny Cash and Hank Snow. And then your mom was more into other things. Tell me about that dichotomy.
Well, in my household, on my mother's side, my stepfather was from Arkansas. He was a big Johnny Cash fan. Ernest Tubb, Hank Snow. He loved Flatt and Scruggs. And over time, I did too, you know. I didn't care much for him, but I liked his music. His music.
But your stepfather being into that, and then your mother from the opposite side of the spectrum. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. She was a big Elvis Presley fan.
You ain't nothing but
She loved Ricky Nelson.
makes my heart start to yearn.
And I got into listening to Freddie King. Who I thought was a great guitar player. I loved his stuff. So I was allowed to sit in my room and listen to that because my mom would say, leave him alone, he ain't hurting anybody. My stepfather just didn't like that stuff.
I thought the Beatles were screaming idiots.
Oh my God. I remember when we saw the Beatles on the television. I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but he's seeing them singing, and I'm standing behind him, and he said, basically, oh my God, would you look at that? And I went around, I went, yeah. Would you look at that?
Yeah.
That is really good. And again, you know, the inspiration for Your Mama Don't Dance, it's just, you know, you get this juxtaposition of how being in a family, they don't like you to like the things that you like. And unfortunately, it forces a child to go in that direction. And so it forced me to be the places that he did not want me to be. Fortunately, it wasn't bad stuff, but it was good stuff. Music and musicians and creative people.
I mean, it literally was Your Mama Don't Dance and Your Daddy Don't Rock and Roll. But what's so great about that is that Elvis sang it. He covered it.
Oh, that's right. He did. That's right. He did put it in a medley in one of his tunes.
Your mama can't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
And of course, Poison, you know, they did it. I had no idea that they'd even record it until after they'd sold millions of records on it.
Your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
And that record, both of those taught me a real important lesson about judgment. And that is that I always liked the way, obviously, Kenny and I did it. When I heard Poison's version, I thought, I don't know, this doesn't sound like they did any justice to it, right? And then I started listening to their other music and their other songs, and I suddenly thought, you know what? This is art. You could take the same picture, and have 3 different painters paint it in the same room, and you're going to get a different image. And if they're great painters, what you're going to see is their style, you know, their patina that they add to it, and and that's really what it's about. And the more I began to listen to their music and I listened to that, I said, they did a great job. They did it in their style and in the way that their fans wanted to do it. But most importantly, it's the song again, isn't it? It's what the words had to say.
It's time to hit the town. Where do you go? You gotta rock it.
And that hit their generation the same way it hit our generation. In fact, I don't think from the time of Socrates much has changed. Books that I wrote, the Socrates said it's something about, isn't it terrible how our children just don't want to listen to their parents in this day and age, you know? So it just happens. It's just part of life. And sometimes it's inspiring and we do well with it. And sometimes we get in trouble.
Why your mama can't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll.
And the man that kind of inspired it in a way covered it. I just think that's kind of one of those things that almost feels magical.
Well, you know what it is? It's a core to core. You know, I was inspired by his core. He was inspired by ours. And that's when we know we're doing the right job, when we're influencing one another in a way where we're putting it back out there for people to enjoy.
Rock and roll.
Leave us a comment about this classic 70s duo. What are your memories and what are your favorite songs? What are your thoughts on both Elvis Presley's version and, of course, Poison's cover that was later a chart topper, went up the charts? What are your memories of all these songs? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to check out our latest series on Patreon, only there. And make sure to subscribe to our channel to be a part of our Spirit of Radio. Take a look at our merch and our Patreon. Really, all of these things help us keep the music alive in a daily channel. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.